Life is too short to be anything but happy. You have the power to choose joy, to choose gratitude and love in every moment. And yet, it's not that intuitively simple and easy to do, is it, for some reason? Well, hello and welcome to the Growth Mindset Podcast with me, Sam Harris, where we study the psychology of self-improvement. Today, I'm delighted to have Gina Gardiner on the podcast, who is the best-selling author of Thriving, Not Surviving. Now, Gina is interesting because half of her body was paralyzed after a ski accident when she was in her 20s, yet she went on to become a successful headmaster of a school for decades and is a 3 times best-selling author and leadership trainer. She wrote that disability is a metaphor for life, our limiting beliefs. I'm not worthy, not clever enough, I'm too old, too poor, not beautiful enough, etc. These beliefs keep us stuck. As a disabled person, I may have challenges with my mobility, but I have the capacity to wheel away, usually at high speed, in my wheelchair. It's not the challenges which define us, but what we do with them. Focusing on what I can do rather than what I can't do, and challenging any beliefs that have the capacity to limit me. Now, Gina is full of brilliantly funny and heartwarming stories, as well as just solid, good advice and mindset tips like that. And I think things like this can really help you see the positive in challenging times and help you focus on what you can control instead of what you can't. It was wonderful to have an interview with Gina, and I truly had a blast. The whole conversation was just like one big motivational hug. We jump into the podcast hearing about the importance of the fact that your life is too short to play the victim when you can choose to play the character that you want to play. So stay tuned for the whole episode.
We're the common denominator, aren't we? We take ourselves into our life every moment of every day, the moment we're conceived until we die. So it just makes sense to make sure that we are the best we can be and to create a great relationship with ourselves.
Essentially, you're the only person that's like read the entire story of your entire life. You kind of get to experience the whole thing. You may as well make it an interesting story just for like the benefit of yourself. Even if you're not telling it to other people, it's if you have to sit there inside yourself watching it, like make it fascinating.
I think we are the author of our own life story. So why give yourself the part of a victim? Give yourself a great part and recognize that it's your choice, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So backtracking to your accidents, I've had a few accidents myself where I've nearly died, and kind of interested to how did you feel as it was happening, sort of the moment you started like sliding down the hill?
I think it's one of those beautiful, beautiful days. I don't know, do you ski or people who listen?
Yeah, one of my times when it died was skiing.
Like the sun was shining and, although there was lots of snow, it was incredibly warm. And I was sitting on a mogul, and these were monster moguls, 6 foot tall. And I'd just gone to my friends because I'd had a previous fall and it'd taken me a while to get there. We were all sitting like elves on a mushroom, each of us sitting on our own mogul. And it began to slide. And initially, I just thought, well, if I rocked my boot in, and I didn't have my skis on, fortunately, that I'd be able to stop myself. But what happened is I rotated out and there was nowhere to land. So I kept bouncing and I very quickly knocked myself out. And so the last thing I remember is hearing a scream, which I recognized must have been me. But in terms of what it was I feeling, I think it was so quick. I didn't have time to calibrate what I was feeling. It was instant panic and then darkness. So, for example, when I suddenly discovered I'd gone up to my room to lie on bed, this is when I was on the second trip with the children in this time Switzerland rather than Austria. And I suddenly found that I was paralyzed down one side. I couldn't move one side of my body at all. I think then because I was fully conscious and I didn't want to frighten the children. And so I had to wait till somebody came to see how I was. Then I was very conscious of how the feelings and just absolute panic, think you can rely on your body and suddenly it's not moving and you don't know why. And a whole range of emotions went through my head at that time. And, as I talk about it, I can feel those emotions. They were so strong that they, even all of these years later, that they still have the capacity to trigger me. But it's interesting, isn't it, that we take life for granted, just bobbing along really. And then something significant happens and our perspective shifts.
Yeah,
And
yeah. You suddenly realize
it's
just how
been,
quickly you can. It's like, oh wow, my life could just like end at any moment. It was crikey. I just walked through life not thinking about this, and really.
and I think particularly when that happens when you're young, I think, if you're towards the end of your life and you're elderly, there's almost an expectation, well, it's coming any time now. But you
Mm,
think you're invincible when you're young. You
yeah.
think, I've got this 7 score years and, and 10 or whatever it is. This is never going to happen to me. It happens to other people. And then you're faced with your own mortality and it really hits you on the nose, doesn't it?
It's really strong. Were you worried that like the other half of your body was going to stop moving, and like what was you sort of thinking exactly besides just being scared?
I think it was, how will I manage? What will I do? Is this going to be forever?
Mm.
And, prior to the ski accident, people's nickname to me was Tigger because I used to bounce around with so much energy and do everything at breakneck speed. And suddenly I was faced with my body's not working. And if I fast forward, I had to use a wheelchair. I resisted it and I should have gone into using a wheelchair to get round much sooner. But I was so worried, what would people think? Would the children take any notice of me? Would the staff be different? Would the local authority think that I was able to do the job? Would the parents think I couldn't do the job? And I resisted it. And it all came to a head. It was the summer holidays, and I'd gone with some friends to the gardens at Wisley. I'm a very keen gardener. And I managed to walk from the car to the kiosk where you bought the ticket, which was in the car park. By the time I walked to the kiosk, I couldn't walk any further. And they actually had wheelchairs for hire, and I wouldn't use one. So I sat in the car park, and in that 2.5 hours while they were gone, I had one of those aha moments, which was, you are cutting your nose off to spite your face here. You don't want to get in a wheelchair. You're so worried about what other people will think that actually you are limiting your life. As it happened, the following day I was rushed into hospital and I was there 4 months. And when I came out, I had no choice but to use a wheelchair. And what I realized is that all of those fears, all of that, what will people think, what a load of cobblers it was,
Mm.
because nobody batted an eyelid other than wanting to be helpful. When occasionally a child would say, why are you in a wheelchair? And I'd say, my legs don't work very well. And they'd shrug and they'd toddle off. The staff only wanted to borrow my electric wheelchair and go in the hall and play wheelies. And so far as I know, the parents may have talked at the gate, but they never ever said anything to me or the authority.
Mm.
And we all do it, don't we? We worry, what will people think if I do this or don't do that? But for the most part, people are so busy doing their own thing, they don't give a
Yeah,
toss.
they're too busy worrying about themselves. They actually care like what's up going on.
Um,
Oh, you can
and in
slow
a
you down.
way,
Fine.
like sharing my story, for many years, I didn't talk about my story. It was almost like the elephant in the room. But I recognized that by talking about it, that hopefully it will give other people the opportunity to think, might not be in a wheelchair, but if I've got limiting beliefs about myself, if I think I'm not tall enough or not clever enough or not rich enough, or I'm too young or too old, that limiting belief, that this is your ability, you
Mm.
carry that around with you. At least for me, I can get in my electric wheelchair and I can wheel off. Always, I have to tell you, at full speed. But I'm only limited by the way that I think.
Exactly. Growth mindset and fixed mindset kind of issues.
If I may, I'd like to share an event in my life which is really pivotal about this business of limiting ourselves. Having beliefs that we allow to keep us playing small. I've run my school. It's been very successful. I've worked in all of these roles, not all at the same time, but when I was a serving head. And when I left headship in 2004, one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to learn about neuro-linguistic programming. And so I became a master practitioner. And I also, although a qualified coach already, I did a qualification in NLP coaching. And so I decided I was going to go and see as many people using NLP as I could. And I ended up in the Excel Centre in London, the East End of London, on a Tony Robbins course. Now, you may be familiar with Tony Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
He's a huge man. I mean, huge, with a big personality. And I went very cynically. thinking American height, yeah, it'll all be ransom accounts, but not actually, no substance to it. How wrong could I be? There were 10,000 people on the course. That in itself was gobsmacking. And the first day he started to talk about a program that he was running in California. And I just dismissed it and thought, there's no way I can manage that. I hadn't gotten a travel electric wheelchair in those days. And I thought I couldn't do it on my own. And so I just dismissed it out of hand. That evening we did the fire. The firewalk is when you walk on hot coals in bare feet. And if you're in the right mindset, then you don't get burnt. Please don't try this at home. You need to do this under very controlled circumstances. But despite the fact that I'd worked all over the country for the government, when I worked with them, I'd had a taxi which picked me up from home. Same taxi driver would drive me to wherever. I'd go and do the work. He'd pick me up and bring me home. From most people's point of view, the fact that I ran a school from a wheelchair and that I did these things, they would have said self-limiting. You're doing a lot. By 2006, I'd had the spinal stimulator fitted about 18 months before. I could walk a very few steps unaided. But with support, somebody holding my arm each side, I managed to walk the 30 feet over hot coals in my bare feet, and I was thrilled. And I sat back into my wheelchair and I was really chuffed that I'd managed it. The guy who came after me was a double amputee, no legs below the knee. He tipped himself up onto his hand and he walked across hot coals on his hands. And I have no idea who he is, but I realized that I was self-limiting. That night I went home and I booked my ticket and I bought my flight. I went up and did the program in California. Since then, did all of Tony Robbins' programs, became a senior leader. I've been all over the world, talking, speaking, working on holiday. And I owe it to that man who I have no idea who he is, because he taught me the only thing that's going to limit me is me. The whole of my work from the time of the accident has been to focus on what I could do rather than what I couldn't. And I'd achieved a great deal. I was still less self-limiting. And if you're listening to this, what I would say to you, ask yourself the question, how often are you self-limiting? How often are you not doing things because you think you might fail? And rather than giving it a go, that you're saying, no. Because ultimately, if you have a success mindset and you work on the principle, I don't quite know how I'm going to manage it, but I am determined to manage it, then the door is open. If you believe you'll fail, then the door is closed.
Very self-fulfilling prophecy, really, isn't
it? Is
you have the
indeed.
mentality that you're going to do it. You work it out along the way, and you need to work out the first step to then start working out the second step. You don't need to sort of see the whole path.
What's interesting is I've told that story many times because I think it's so powerful. And many people have reported back that it actually made them think differently and that they have become much more determined to give things a go rather than be frightened.
Yeah, there's a lot of glass ceilings in our minds that we're just not aware of, or kind of like the 4-minute mile when someone goes and does it, people can do it, and all these things that we don't think about, and definitely have these sort of things going on in sentiment stuff. And even in businesses before that I've run, I've done some successful things, but I haven't really raised a big amount of money or anything. And now my current one, I'm like, screw it, I'm just going for it. All the other people that have done it, they just did it because they felt like doing it. There was something that makes you qualified to go and do these things.
I've done a lot of research about highly successful people. And what I've discovered is that actually there's nothing superhuman about them. The one thing that makes the difference is that they have an absolute belief that they will succeed. And when you look at very successful people, many of them have failed many times, but they don't see failure as a negative. They see failure as an absolute opportunity to learn. And I'm reminded of Dyson. Many people have got a Dyson Hoover or air conditioner or fan. But did you know how many prototypes he created before he got his first working Hoover? I've read that it's 2,000. Now, if he'd given up 1,999 prototype, he wouldn't be he was elected the richest businessman in England, I believe, last year.
Yeah, I read that. I was like, whoa, I didn't see that coming.
So it's having the resilience and the determination, but also the mindset which says the only failures are the failure to try or the failure to learn from your mistakes.
Totally agreed. We seem to see things in the same way on that side of things. But yeah, I mean, I remember when I was in hospital with my leg and thinking that I might be in a wheelchair for a while, I was kind of a little bit excited in some ways of being like, I've been meaning to do a lot more writing and failing because I keep on running around doing too many things. I was like, oh, if I'm stuck in a wheelchair, I'll like actually have to do the things that I haven't got time to do. And in some ways I was like, yeah, I can make the most of this and try to focus on the positives. But yeah, I guess I kind of was already kind of grateful for just being alive because I thought I was going to die before that point. And I was like, oh, well, maybe if I'm in a wheelchair, that's also already fine. So I think I kind of somehow had the right mentality, but I'd already nearly died like 3 times already before that one. So it's getting a bit more used to it.
It reminds me of a kid, you know,
Yeah.
your 9 lives at a rate of knots. Maybe it's
I need to,
a lesson from that.
yeah, my mum's getting a bit like,
Be
not
glad
happy
you
with
to
things.
learn that lesson because I should think they worry about you, don't they?
Definitely. Like my mum started to have some heart issues as well. So it's kind of not good for her heart if I phone her from hospital again being like, oh, so mum, like, honestly, I am fine.
The one thing that I think that for me that I recognized looking back, not at the time, but looking back, is at every level I should have died. You know, the fall was so long and so challenging that actually what it taught me is, right, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Because what I want to do is make a positive difference. And if I've been given this second chance, then it makes sense to make the most of it.
Yeah, definitely. It's been really useful in terms of helping guide your life and do more sensible things. It's sort of like, I would recommend nearly dying to anyone if they can get around to it at some point. It
Well,
wasn't too convenient to have like 3 more
caveat
times.
that, emphasis on the nearly.
Yes, yes, for sure. To sort of make you a bit more aware of these things. And yeah, life is certainly too short to waste putting off doing the things that you want to do.
What's interesting listening to you is that I have no doubt that you're not someone who stays within your comfort zone, that you are ready to challenge yourself and that actually you need that level of challenge in your life. And if it's not naturally, then you'll create that opportunity. And it's very interesting because if you think of the continuum, along the continuum, there are those who need absolute certainty and security and safety is their watchword and will stay within their comfort zone, and often to the extent that, they eat the same things and they go to the same places and so on. And at the other end of the continuum are people who need that level of challenge and uncertainty and variety. And there's nothing good or bad about them. They're just different. But, people are listening to this. I think one of the things, is recognize where you are on the continuum and the fact that that's okay, but also other people are coming from a different place and that you need to understand one another. It's not that one's right and one's wrong. It is just that you're wired differently and that your needs, your motivation is very different. And there's a great model of motivation which talks about 4 psychological motivators: certainty, security, survival, all of the control things, or uncertainty. They go as a pair. And we all need both, but you'll favor one. And from our conversation today, you favor uncertainty, but you'll still need that level of, I know that I've got a roof over my head and I've got enough to eat, all of those things. That's the Maslow's hierarchy of need. But then the second 2 are that of significance. And significance you can get from the clothes you wear, from the job you do, from your car, your house, your all sorts of things. Some people get significance from always being ill. Some people get significance from always helping other people. And significance is one of those things that if you need it, then you'll have it on any terms. And again, it's a continuum. But the other side of that is love and connection. And connection is the safe connection with friends, family, the pets, organizations, and so on. And love is that sort of intimate, messy love between 2 people. But often people will settle for connection or for significance when what they really want is love. But we all need all 4. And then the last 2 are the spiritual motivators, that of learning and contribution. And for some people, they're very important. And some people, they have no importance at all. But understanding where you come from is really useful. and recognizing where other family members and colleagues at work and friends come from can make relationships so much easier to manage and to thrive.
I definitely did take a while to kind of learn where I was in some of those things. And you sort of think that you recognize that you're different, but you still expect people to kind of have some of the similar things to you, maybe. And, or it would be like a distribution about your norm rather than like, actually, maybe I'm kind of the weird one over here. And like everyone else is sort of more over there.
It's not about, not weird. It's simply just recognizing that in order for you to feel by one, but, for people to feel really fulfilled, you need to have that need met. And if it's not met, if we put you into a situation where every day was the same and there was no challenge and there was nothing new and there was no physical exhilaration from what you were doing, I suspect that you wouldn't thrive.
No, I'd get pretty nuts. Like, I'm not very good with like a job. Those kind of normal things. I can't really watch
Unless you
TV.
find that encapsulates what you do.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
the way, if you put somebody else who needed high levels of certainty and the routine, who was fearful about doing things that they didn't know, and they asked them to do the things that you do, they'd be incredibly fearful. They certainly wouldn't be thriving. They'd be terrified because it would take them out of their comfort zone too much. So, it's horses for courses. It's not right or wrong. And I think for many people, we try and make it right or wrong rather than just accepting it's different.
Which is one of the interesting things, like put people more in a box of being like saying that everyone should be an entrepreneur or everyone should kind of be like this and that like their life isn't fulfilled if they're not living in this way.
I couldn't disagree more. I think each of us are so individual. We've got to find what's right for us. And I think one of the reasons that there is so much unhappiness in the world is so many people are trying to fit, to shape themselves to satisfy somebody else's blueprint of how they should, and not being authentically, genuinely who they are. And so long as what you're doing is not damaging other people or the environment or whatever, being true to who you are and finding a route that works for you is really important. And I would, one of the great things about life is finding a profession, a job, a way of supporting yourself that you actually are passionate about and that you love. Because then when you do that, it's not like going to work every day, it's going to play every day. And so for you, finding a job that has a level of excitement and a level of variety and, dare I say it, danger, and there are roles out there, and it's just finding the right one for you. Because if we put you into an office, 9 to 5, paper-based, in front of the computer, I suspect you would wither and die. Emotionally and spiritually.
Yeah, definitely. Pretty accurate. If you run a business, you'll know that people are the most important thing in the company. Every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for a small business owner, because it is. Now, you want to be certain that you have the best candidates and screening tools available for you, which is why I recommend LinkedIn Jobs. I found it so easy to use for my hiring, and it makes it faster to find the right people for your team. And it's free. Small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 for a reason. It's simple to set up your job, add screening questions so you're talking to the right people, and put the purple hiring frame on your profile, and you're ready to go. You don't need to waste so much time and money talking to the wrong people when you can use LinkedIn Jobs to find qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster for free. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/growth. That's linkedin.com/growth, GROWTH, for the unfortunate people at spelling like myself. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So what about you? Where would you put yourself on this? Like, how did you sort of find where you were and what you needed to do to make yourself more complete?
I think I was very lucky. I recognized as soon as before I started teaching, I didn't know who I was and I wasn't happy. But I recognized very early on, teaching is something that intrinsically is part of who I am. And supporting other people and helping them grow and watching the aha moment of the development of other people is something that gives me enormous satisfaction and pleasure. And I had the real privilege of doing that in the context of school, both as a teacher and as a head teacher. And then latterly in working with individuals, couples, teams and whole organizations. And I started genuinely just over 2 years ago to be able to impact on more people. And so my mission is I want to positively impact on 1 million people in the next 5 years. And to do that through enlightened leadership. So my challenge is no longer skiing down a mountain at breakneck speed or paragliding or skiing. My version of the challenge is to do what I'm doing and help more people on a very significant scale. And to do that using the skills and techniques and the strategies that I've developed over the years. So if I tell you that 2.5 years ago, I didn't have a Facebook page, I used the internet for research and emails. Since then, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, I've had to learn to create videos. I've created these online programs, very used to delivering them face to face, not a problem. But the complexity of the technology, for me, that's been like climbing Everest. And I'm not saying I'm at the summit, but I'm somewhere in the foothills. So I'm challenged by that. But when I look at what's been achieved with help, that gives me endless satisfaction. And I am determined that I am going to create a legacy where great enlightened leadership can make a difference. For me, enlightened leadership is not just about leading a big corporation, it's about leading your own life. Okay, so leadership for life means how you operate within the world, within your personal relationships, within your professional relationships, and what impact you're having. And so my view is every word that you utter, every action you take, or lack of words or actions leaves a living legacy. So many people use their words unkindly, and as they do that, they're leaving a negative legacy. So for me, it's all about taking radical responsibility for everything you do and being sure that what you do actually is making a positive impact.
I think I really agree with the whole philosophy of it's not just about like having like a leadership business legacy. It's just sort of a legacy of like having enjoyment on the earth and making other people happy kind of thing. And something I've really looked at in this podcast is not just people who are successful by the normal metrics of like being a billionaire. I mean, I've interviewed some billionaires, but also some people that are just really happy and maybe they got a bit of success, but then they're like, actually, all I need is a nice house and like to be able to like live in Costa Rica and have a fun time and play with my dogs. And it kind of stopped, but living like a brilliant life in terms of happiness and enjoy fulfillment every day. And you're like, what is the thing that we strive for? Because you've said like people kind of aim for this thing that we see on like social media and other things like on Instagram. People want to be exactly like the people that they know, even though that might not be what makes them happy. And half those people aren't even that happy anyway. You only see like the happy part of their lives where they're smiling and you don't see everything else behind it. It's really odd.
I mean, I think there's another pandemic, not just COVID-19, and that's comparisonitis. Comparisonitis means that, you're constantly comparing your physical body with photographs in the media that have been airbrushed and people who've had surgery and so on. But, for me, happiness is absolutely your choice. And one of the problems for people is that they've got the I'll be happy when syndrome. So I'll be happy when I've got the big house and the good job and the big car, and I've got a partner who's perfect and doesn't leave the top of the toothpaste or toilet seat up, and I've got kids who tidy their bedroom without being nagged, and the dog is perfectly behaved. And we create all of these criteria, and I've got to have this and this and this. And as soon as one is satisfied, we put another one on the end.
Yeah.
The problem with that, of course, is that happiness is always in the future. It's never in the now. Now, if you choose a different way, which is I'll be happy every time the sun shines or every time it rains and I can appreciate the fact that it's watering the garden, every time I have a nice cup of tea or a hot shower, every time somebody smiles at me, every time the cat or the dog makes me smile, and that we create it.
Yes.
That happiness, the conditions for it are very easy to not only achieve, but to appreciate. Then you can be happy a great part of the time. Now, does that mean that you're walking around with a big grin on your face? No, it doesn't. But what it does mean is that you're giving yourself the conditions of happiness and making an active choice. And when you do that, then the quality of your life changes. You don't have to wait to go to Costa Rica to have the lovely house. You can be happy where you are if you choose to be. It is absolutely your choice. And even on the deepest, darkest days, and make no mistake, I've had some of those, there are still things to be happy about.
Yeah, definitely. It's okay. If you're not dead, there's usually something to be grateful for, pretty much. And
Oh, yeah.
if you are dead, then you had a good life, regardless. So,
We're not
but
lying about it, so far as we
yeah,
know.
exactly.
And on the other side,
Not
yeah.
really worth worrying about.
There is a happiness technique that you can use, which is as you wake up in the morning, before I get up, hands on hips, waggle your elbows. I can't
Yeah.
feel my coffin. It's a new day, can't feel my coffin. Today I choose to be happy. But because it's so ridiculous, it makes you smile. And starting the day on a smile is not a bad thing, is it?
No, it's definitely the best way. Okay, cool. I'm going to try that. I need to like maybe put a sign next to my bed for when I first wake up to make sure that I remember.
Yeah.
Could never
So
do
some people call it the funky chicken. Some people call it the penguin. Other people I know called it the ostrich. Call it what you like. But the whole process is about starting the day on a really positive note.
Cool. Yeah. It is like, I do get a bit confused by, it's kind of all within your mind in terms of you kind of decide to be happy. But you know, when you're around some people and it just sort of happens so naturally, and then other people you have to really like try, and confusing one.
Well, it's interesting because you have people who I call energy havens. They're people who are very negative, who they are cut half empty. They will dwell on problems. And I would say to you, you either need to limit the amount of time you spend with those people, or you need to imagine yourself in a golden bubble and protect yourself so that anything you want to go out of the bubble can, but that their negativity is a bit like throwing eggs at a riot shield and just slips down rather than you internalizing it. They say that we are the sum of the 5 people we spend most of our time with. And I think that negativity is like a virus, it's catching. Do you know, the research shows that when something goes wrong, we tell on average 37 people. Now, added to that, it's a bit like Chinese whispers. As we tell each person, it gets embellished and it becomes more and more of the focus. It takes on a life of its own. But in contrast, the research shows that when things go right, people tell on average 5. Now, how would the world be if it was the other way around? Now, I don't use my 37 up. I suspect you don't either. So if we're not using our 37, somebody is telling far more than 37. You know, negativity is catching. So for me, well, I survived and thrived because I focus on what I can do rather than focusing on what I can't. So when I came out of hospital after one of the 2 big surgeries I had failed back surgery syndrome, I was back at school 4 days later. Because if I stayed at home and somebody hadn't filled the kettle and left out a cup, I couldn't make a cup of tea. I had daytime TV and I could read. They were the 2 things I could do. I have to tell you, daytime television doesn't do it for me.
Yeah.
But I could go to school. Somebody could help me into the taxi and help me out of the taxi. I could go to school and I could run my school from my office with help in terms of physicality. But my mouth worked, my brain worked, my hands worked, and I could do something that was useful and I loved. I mean, 5 months after I came out of hospital, the consultant said, you might think about you going back a couple of hours a week. And I just laughed because I had been part-time for 3 weeks and then full-time thereafter. And that was because for me, and I'm not saying that would work for everybody,
Yeah.
but for me, the focusing on what I could do and doing something positive and useful was a huge part of who I am and of my recovery.
That's interesting because I think some people sort of, they almost need to have like the break. Like you said, some people kind of get energy from being ill and stuff. I kind of give that a bit. Yeah.
But one from having a very poor sense of worth. And, you know, people, when they're very tiny, most of our beliefs come from when they're small. What I suspect has happened is parents were busy. And then when they said they were poorly, suddenly they got their parents' attention. So then they did it more and they got more attention. And so that's become a pattern of behavior. And 95% of our thinking and our behavior is habitual. So people who feel that the only way that they are noticed and valued by others. Now, please don't think there are lots of people who are ill because they're ill, and that's not the case. But there are a percentage of people for whom being ill means that they get attention, they have a value that they don't have when they're not. So there are some people who believe that their only value is when they're doing something for somebody else, rather than recognizing that actually you're enough as you are. But, each of us is a human being with our experience and our creativity and our uniqueness. And that is actually enough. We're not broken. For many people, that's something that they find difficult to recognize.
Yeah. I think the thing, you would have been a really good teacher. I guess I'd quite like to know, because we've covered mainly like your accident and sort of lessons around that, but we haven't discussed anything like failures of your own choices as such, and like lessons you've learned from that.
That's interesting. Along the way, I made mistakes, and that's how I've learned. Inevitably, professionally, I think you learn as you go on. And in terms of, have there been big gaffes? Early on, I appointed a couple of people because there was a teacher shortage, and I thought I'll appoint that person because I might not get somebody else. And I learned my lesson that you don't do that, because actually, if you've got the wrong person, it creates all sorts of problems. So I would say that failures like that. In many ways, the failure, I suppose, for me has been a personal one, in that in my absolute drive and focus that school would do well, and my health was in a sense put on the back burner, work has always been great pain control. When I'm busy doing something that I love and I'm interested in, I don't feel the body. And I think I took that to an art form. And if I'd listened to my body perhaps earlier on, maybe things wouldn't have got as bad as they did.
You only have one life, you can't really A/B test tonight.
No. And that even now, I'm a recovering workaholic, not out of work. There are moments when I get it wrong and I suddenly, turn around and I've done a 15-hour day and I wonder why I hurt. Because while I'm working, I don't. As soon as I stop, the body says, now it's my turn. So I think that for me was a big learning. And it was interesting that I was on a course, this is probably only 10 or 12 years ago, and we were doing core values, and I'd done core values time and time again, and suddenly discovered that health wasn't one of my top values. Now, given, my situation, you would have thought that would have been top of my list. It's now, but it wasn't then. So it's not surprising that the way I dealt with things didn't put health into that particular arena. So I would say that is something that has been a hard lesson. And the other is that there's something I still struggle with somewhat, is asking for help. And I was given a very salutary lesson. I was in America on a course and I was working with a buddy and we were talking about asking for help. And I was upfront and said, I find it a bit difficult to ask for help at times. And his name was John, and he said to me, he was really cross with me, do you like helping other people? I said, yeah, I love it. He said, does it give you a sense of satisfaction? I said, yes, it does. He said, then what right have you to stop other people having that same satisfaction? How dare you? Now, the course finished and I'd set aside a couple of extra days. It was in December. And so I went up to the local mall to buy some Christmas presents. And I'd hired a big electric wheelchair. So off I toddled to the mall in my electric wheelchair. And on my way back, there was a mile-long drive from the road to the hotel, and it was uphill. About a third of the way up the mile, my wheelchair ran out of gas. I had no phone that was working because there was no connection. And I was in the middle of the drive in my electric wheelchair, stuck. Taxi drove into the driveway and the taxi driver got out, didn't speak much English, and I don't speak any Spanish, but he could see the predicament. So he parked the car, he made his passenger get out, and they started to push the wheelchair up the hill. Then another taxi arrived. The first taxi driver flagged down the second taxi. There was a big argy-bargy. Again, the taxi driver was Spanish. And his passengers got out. So now there's 2 parked taxis. I've now got 6 people pushing one behind the other. By the time I got to the reception of the hotel, there were 17 people pushing my wheelchair. Everybody was laughing in absolute hysterics. We had become a complete spectacle. And I learned the lesson, ask for help, because generally speaking, people are very pleased to give it. And if they say no, then don't be emotionally attached to the outcome.
Oh, that's such a cool story. I kind of feel jealous. I wasn't in a taxi at the time passing by to join the Congo.
So, God, it was so embarrassing. It taught me an lesson.
Yeah. That's great. I'm kind of feel like I'm going bad myself. I don't know why.
So
Oh,
I
nice.
think they're my biggest learnings, really.
Interesting. I like asking these questions. Have you ever had any kids that were going in the wrong direction and like you feel like you made a difference to turn them in the right direction, or maybe someone that you failed to help? And
I'm very fortunate that there are very few children that I believe that I failed completely. No doubt I could have done more. But some people spring to mind, and one of the nicest things that happened to me towards the end of my headship was that I had a visitor from a pupil that I had helped. And it was very early on in my teaching career. I had a class of children, and I had a boy in the class called Paul Walls. His nickname was Wizzy. And he was frightened of maths. He was struggling. And he kept on saying, I can't do it. And his mum used to say, well, he's just like me, he can't do maths. And I'd say to her, look, hold on. It's really important. He's not you. What we need to be clear about, Paul, is I've not found the key yet. This is not your problem. This is my problem. I need to find the right way to teach you so that you get it. And over the year, he started not only to enjoy maths, but to be very good at it. This day, I was in my office and my secretary popped in and said, there's a visitor for you. Do you think you could pop out? And I came out and there was a bloke. He was in his 30s and he was holding the biggest bouquet, a huge bottle of champagne and the biggest box of chocolates I had ever seen. And he said, you don't remember me, do you? And I thought, no, I don't remember you. And said, I'm Paul Wands. And I instantly remembered him. And he said, I just want you to know that I saw your picture in the local paper. I was come home to see my mum. And there was something about the school and you were in the paper. And I've come to thank you because I'm now in the financial industry. All of my work is about maths, which I love. And that's all because you helped me learn to love maths. And that was just magic. Because most of the time you have no idea. You do your job and kids go off and you hope that they've taken the lessons that they've learned. But you often don't hear back. You may occasionally see things in the paper or meet a parent and they say what the kids are doing. But that was a really special moment of a child who had significantly struggled, but turned things around. And why? Because he suddenly learned to believe that he could.
Mm. Oh, absolutely growth mindset. I love all these stories. Did you cry at the time? I feel like I might cry right now.
I mean, I have to say I welled up. I was just so gobsmacked that he'd taken the time, and it was just lovely.
Yeah.
Because I'd moved schools. I mean, it wasn't even if I was at the same school. I'd moved schools from when I taught him, but he, as I say, he'd found me and said thank you. And that was just great. And these days with social media, what's been nice is that, people that I've taught or who've been at school have found me. And I've had, many messages through social media saying, do you remember me? I just wanted to let you know how well I'm doing. And thank you. Just very special.
Thank you. Yeah, I bet you must have like a lot of people that remember you. So 2 things I really like to ask. One is, what is one of your earliest childhood memories that's quite distinct?
It's not a very nice memory, actually. I had measles when I was 2.5, and I had to have 3 operations on my eyes as a result. So one of my earliest memories is being wrapped very tightly in a blanket and making a lot of fuss while they took stitches out of my eyes.
Crikey.
But
Well, there we go. Glad I asked. Quickly for hours. Anyway, yeah, lastly, what's the kindest thing someone has done for you?
oh, goodness me. There've been lots of kind acts.
We're happy to have
Kindest.
a few.
uh, They range from the very, very simple, seemingly simple. So, fast forward or fast backwards to a time where, I was wheelchair bound. That I was struggling to deal with this and to deal with being, um, working at the school. And I had 2 head teacher friends, and they would consistently, when there was a meeting, come and get me, put me in the car, take me, bring me back. And one of those would pick me up at the weekend to go and have a break at the weekend, because without somebody helping me, I was completely housebound. The consistent kindness of those people over a period of time until I was able to walk enough to have an electric wheelchair in my car with a hoist, and I could walk from the front seat down to the back and stand long enough for the chair to come out. We're talking about a period of 5 or 6 years that they consistently thought about me and made sure that if one of them couldn't do it, that they'd phone the other and the other could do it. That has meant such an enormous amount to me. And I think it's when people, take the time to ring, or they notice that perhaps you're a bit down, and in fact, yesterday was a nightmare with technology, and somebody happened to phone me, and I very unusually for me, I was extremely stressed. I don't do stress, but technology is the one thing that can really get me going. And I had some deadlines to meet, and the technology wasn't helping. And we had a conversation anyway. They phoned this morning to say, "Are you okay? Have you got it sorted out?" They couldn't help me with the technology, but they were just checking up that I was okay. And that sort of seemingly little makes a huge difference.
Cool. Lovely. Thanks. And any parting words of most important advice for what to do with your life and these things?
I would say to you, whoever's listening to this, you have one life. Life isn't a spectator sport. That, grab it, take the opportunities, and learn that, if you're uncomfortable about stepping out of your comfort zone, recognize that the minute you do step out of your comfort zone, it expands. So it's about recognizing that you feel fearful, but instead of being fearful, just recognize it as it's something that's unfamiliar. And as soon as you start to do it, that unfamiliar becomes familiar. And that if you need help, reach out. There are people there who can help you. You don't need to struggle on your own. Because you want to make the most of this life. It's an amazing opportunity. So don't waste it.
Thank you very much on that. It was my absolute pleasure having you. And yeah, stay safe.
Thank you very much indeed. And people want to see, there's lots of free resources on the website, which is genuinely in the word you.com. And then there are also programs there. The books are there and they're on Amazon if people are interested. So love to hear from them. Gina at genuinely-you.com will find me.
Cool. Thanks a lot. And hope people do reach out, because they've learned a lot from doing it. Nice.
Yeah, that's been great. Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure. Well, thank you so much for Gina coming on the show and sharing so many of her wonderful stories and ideas. She was such an inspiring person. Despite so many setbacks that she's had in her life, she still finds time to enjoy herself and help others, and to just live a life that she's proud of and excites her. As she said at the start of the show, we are the author of our own life story, so why play the victim? Recognize that it's your choice and give yourself a greater part. So if you enjoyed the show, or if it made you smile, it would be great if you could share it with a friend, or help us out by leaving a positive review on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Castbox, wherever you listen. Please show us some love, because, that would be cool. And as we wrap up this episode, I would very much encourage you to take Gina's message to heart. Remember that happiness is not just a destination, it's a conscious choice that we make every day. So make sure that you enjoy yourself today and don't wait to start looking after yourself.